From a Sasquatch stalking the edge of a homestead to horrifying discoveries deep in the woods, these are some of the clearest and most compelling pieces of footage ever recorded. Up first is the Provo Canyon encounter. This terrifying encounter begins with a couple hiking in the renowned Bigfoot hotspot of Provo Canyon. While they may not have been looking for a Sasquatch, they certainly find one. The couple spots the creature watching them from a concealed position before it then rises to its full height in what seems to be a threat. The hikers may not speak Sasquatch, but they do speak survival instinct, and they make a break for it the moment the creature begins to reach its full height. Since then, there have been several other sightings in Provo Canyon, including of a Sasquatch throwing rocks at another hiker. Next is Port Renfrew. Vancouver Island has many lush areas of wilderness, including around Port Renfrew, which seems to be one of the last locations of a Sasquatch population on the island. This hiker ended up coming across a very, very hairy situation, if you'll pardon my pun. There, just a dozen meters away, is a creature capable of tearing a tree apart with its bare hands, a creature that is known to hunger for meat. The Sasquatch doesn't seem to notice the hiker and instead is focused on harvesting something from a tree in front of it. Whether that's foliage or sap or grubs, we don't exactly know. Thankfully, this hiker was lucky enough to be able to retrace their steps and escape both without alerting the creature or being injured. Now, for a homesteading horror. Our homes are meant to be our safe spaces, but for homes out in the rural wilderness, there are dangers that can turn your entire homestead into a living horror. This family had been making strange sightings in the distance for some time, but it was after several weeks of unnerving sightings that they finally spotted the creature for sure. The large Sasquatch is seen watching from the edge of the clearing and is no doubt an intimidating sight. After the sighting, the family decided to take more proactive measures to protect themselves and began using fireworks and other loud bangs to ward off the creature, which has seemingly worked as they've made no sightings since. Now for the famed Clingman's Dome. The highest point in Tennessee is likely also one of the most southern points where Sasquatch can be seen. Sasquatch, being the North American species, tend to live in cool environments, their thick fur making life in warmer areas difficult except for set species. And so, in the southern reaches of their range, they often stay restricted to the mountains, where cold air and isolation gives them the best environment to live in. This footage was recorded by some hikers who stopped when they saw a whole crowd of people watching this tree line. The people had said they saw something like a bear walking on two legs, after which some of this stunning footage was captured. The eastern Sasquatch populations are considered to be under extreme threat as habitat loss and warming are putting a greater strain on these creatures to survive. Little else is known of the eastern population, as sightings of the western or midwest populations are simply far more common. Next up are forested remains. A group of hunters near the Banff National Park came across a horrifying encounter with a large Sasquatch nest adorned with the remains of unknown creatures, some of which could have been human. Instead of, I don't know, alerting the authorities, they decide to set up a trail cam watching over the nest, which does end up picking up some pretty incredible footage. We watch as the creature returns to its nest, and yet it can clearly sense something is wrong. It's likely Sasquatch do not have as good vision as us, but what they do have is a significantly better sense of smell. The Sasquatch ends up sniffing out the camera and rips it from the tree. However, the camera was recoverable the next day when the hunters returned for it. And finally, Marble Mountain. This footage was recorded by a leader of a youth group called Campus Life who made a yearly trip out to Marble Mountain. However, in 2001, something special would happen. First, the group would discover a strange shelter constructed in the forest, made of thick pine boughs and branches stacked to create a hovel large enough to fit 2 people or a single Sasquatch. But that wasn't the exciting part. Anyone could have made that shelter. The exciting part comes just a few minutes later when a student calls out that they see something up on the ridge. Way far off in the distance, walking along the ridge of Marble Mountain is some sort of giant bipedal creature. It's easily above the 8-foot mark, judging by the trees that it passes. However, unlike other sightings, this footage actually lasts for quite a long time. It watches the creature cross over the ridge and behind a rock outcropping. This has been considered by many to be among the most definitive pieces of proof available. Others, however, have claimed it's just someone wearing a big coat stumbling over a mountain ridge. What do you think?
Well, we can't really call this thing Bigfoot, Littlefoot maybe, Sasquatch Jr. This footage was posted by a woman named Stephanie Wood to the Bigfoot Believers Facebook group. In her post, Stephanie shared this blurry image of what she claims could be a baby Sasquatch, or a squatchlet, a term sometimes used to describe smaller, more elusive Bigfoot-like creatures. Along with the original photo, she posted a cropped close-up of the figure, saying that while the first instinct might be to dismiss it as a person in a costume, after closer inspection, section, she's just not sure. She wrote, "Could this be a baby Sasquatch or one of those hairy little people that pop up in reports every now and then?" Now, what I'd like to ask is, sorry, who are these little hairy people that pop up in reports every now and again? My brain needs to learn more about this. Anyway, some commenters are convinced by the photo, with one person claiming that the deer in the foreground really makes it more believable, and I gotta say, I didn't think of this at first, but I think I agree. It's not easy to get that close to a deer. They'll usually just have run off long before you get a chance to get this distance from it, let alone pose for a photo like this, but maybe deer are more comfortable with young Sasquatches. So I remember this one really creeping me out when I first saw it over a decade ago. The story here is that this video was taken in Carbondale, Pennsylvania, where residents had apparently been reporting strange sightings and eerie noises at night, with some even spotting a creature resembling Bigfoot. But this creature was different. It was described as being white in color, more like a yeti. One local homeowner managed to capture this video of the creature after hearing a disturbance in their backyard, which is surrounded by dense woods. Now, some people are kinda thrown by the cameraman's reaction here. He sees this furry white monster dashing through the trees at night, and his reaction is a pretty casual sounding, "What was that?" Well, some commenters disagree, saying the subdued reaction actually sounds pretty convincing. One commenter wrote, "As far as the reaction of the photographer, 'What was that?' it's not too hard to understand. When looking out in the darkness, things are not as easily recognizable. Also, he does not have the luxury of viewing the creature on YouTube in slow motion, and the mind barely has time to make a judgment of what it is." But what are your judgments on this one? Let us know down below. This video was taken in Algonquin Park, Ontario, Canada in 2010 with a bumper mounted GoPro. Zooming in and slowing things down, you can clearly see a large dark figure standing by the side of the road. Now, the video was taken by an unnamed man who sent it to the Ontario Wildlife Research Bigfoot group, who released it. One interesting point that a YouTuber named Snowwalker Prime made, who analyzed and reposted this footage, is that walking around in a gorilla suit in this neck of the woods really is ill-advised. You could easily get mistaken for a bear and get taken out by a hunter. So if this is a hoax, it's a kind of dangerous one. What I also like about this footage is that the original video was over an hour long. The guy filming apparently took lots of videos of his drives through the area. This was just one small piece edited down, and it just makes the footage a little more convincing. Plus, the figure does not look human. If that is a suit, it's a really good one. It's got those long arms, it's big, it's a good one. This video was taken in Alaska, posted to the YouTube channel Patua76, who wrote in the description, "I was on a logging road in Ketchikan hiking with my friend when I saw it. Boy, did my heart start racing. I was about 40 yards from the road, not sure if it knew I was there or not because of the noise flowing from water from the stream. It seemed to travel fast. It made my hair stand up. At one point you can see a whitish yellowish thing in its hand. You could see it jump, and after that point it just seems to disappear. There was a lot of brush and trees between it and I. I could not tell where it had gone. It was a scary, sort of exciting feeling at the same time. We went to search for tracks, but the riverbed where we thought it was walking was full of perfect skipping rocks. We found no prints." Now, after filming the creature walking behind a tree, the cameraman loses sight of it, and after scanning the trees for a bit, he decides to get out of there. And yeah, the last thing you'd want is to see a Bigfoot and then not know where it is around you. That's a scary idea. So I don't have a lot of info on this last one, only that it was captured by a group of hikers in Colorado. Take a look at this. Alright, so a pretty hectic video, right? The camera is shaky as hell. We only get a quick glimpse of the creature before it runs into the brush. But all the same, the thing does look massive. And let's be honest, if you found yourself in this situation, would you really be holding the camera perfectly steady and getting like Stanley Kubrick level steady shots of the thing? Yeah, probably not. I'd love to know more about this video, so if anyone has any info, let me know down below. And what are your thoughts on Sasquatch and Bigfoot, Yeti, and whatever other hairy creatures you know of. This first story is one of the earliest widely circulated Bigfoot accounts in American history. It was told by Teddy Roosevelt, of all people. Before he became president, Roosevelt spent time ranching in North Dakota and exploring the wilderness. In his 1893 book, The Wilderness Hunter, he recounts a story told to him by an elderly frontiersman simply referred to as Bowman. It took place in the Bitterroot Range of Idaho and Montana. Bowman and a partner were trapping in a remote pass when they set up camp in a small glade. After leaving for a bit to hunt, they came back to find their lean-to destroyed and their belongings scattered everywhere. At first they assumed it was a bear, but when they examined the tracks, they realized the creature had been walking around on 2 legs. Not impossible for a bear, but not something they normally do for very long. Well, that night, Bowman was woken up by a strong odor. That's when he saw a massive shadowy figure at the entrance to their camp. He fired his rifle, but missed, and the creature vanished into the darkness. The men spent the night on high alert, and in the morning found the lean-to destroyed again, with 2-legged footprints leading away. Over the next day, as they collected traps, Bowman's companion was killed. The attacker was described as a monstrous half-human, half-beast creature that apparently struck silently from behind, breaking his neck and biting his throat without consuming the body. Bowman abandoned everything but his rifle, and he fled. Now, Roosevelt made it very clear in his book that Bowman was this stoic, experienced frontiersman, not one to get spooked easily. But as he told Roosevelt the story, his voice quivered. He seemed genuinely traumatized. In 2002, a hunter in Choctaw County, Oklahoma, reported being chased back to his truck by a Sasquatch. His report was shared by the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. It was dusk. He was following the railroad tracks when he heard something moving behind him. Now, like most of these cases, he assumed it was a bear at first. But when he looked back, he saw this large bipedal creature moving back into the woods. It was about 7 feet tall, with a long torso and arms with dark fur, making grunting sounds like a hog. Moments later, the thing started hurling rocks at him. Of course, he bolted back to his truck. The hunter also mentioned an old man by the lake who shot at a very similar looking creature, only to have more return and throw rocks and sticks at his house. Other loggers in the area had also told similar stories about strange, aggressive creatures roaming those woods. Just back in February, a Penn State student known only as MK to the media was hunting raccoons in the Pennsylvania game lands. While walking along a creek, he felt uneasy, like something was watching him, and he noticed strange sounds, plap, 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 like something was dropping into water, along with bubbling noises in the creek. As it got darker, MK heard a sharp knock against a tree and realized something was following him. He tried to keep as calm as possible as he headed back toward his truck, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being stalked. Thinking it may be a person who wanted to do who knows what, he decided to call a friend on speakerphone, asking him to meet him and bring his AR-15. Then about 40 yards away, he saw it. It was a massive creature standing on 2 legs. It had gray skin, a receding hairline, and a very muscular build. The thing had no neck, and its face, as MK said, looked like King Kong. He only got a brief look at it before it disappeared back into the trees. Fortunately, he did make it back safely to his truck, but he was pretty shaken up. In May of 1971, Bobby Ford of Fouke, Arkansas, claimed he was attacked outside his home by a massive ape-like creature. Ford described it as 7 feet tall, 3 feet wide across the chest, with red eyes and heavy, labored breathing. According to him, the beast put its arm around his shoulder and tried to grab him. Terrified, Ford managed to tear free and sprinted so fast that he didn't stop to open his front door, he just crashed straight through it. He was treated at the hospital for scratches and shock. Now, before this, Ford said the creature had been hanging around his property for days. His wife, Elizabeth, reported waking up one night to see a hairy arm with claws reaching through a window, and she also noticed its glowing red eyes. On the night of the actual attack, Ford, his brother, and a hunting companion claimed they spotted the figure near the house with a flashlight. They opened fire on it. Thought they saw it collapse, but when screams rang out from the women inside the house, Ford ran back. That's when the creature ambushed him. Deputies investigated and found strange 3-toed tracks and claw marks on the porch. Soon after, reporters Jim Powell and Dave Hall visited the scene and found the Ford family were packing up, leaving the home they just moved into. Powell's article coined the name Fouke Monster. Within months, the story spread like wildfire. The following year, it inspired the cult film The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is really worth a watch if you're into Bigfoot type stuff. There are not a lot of genuinely spooky Bigfoot movies out there, but Legend of Boggy Creek is definitely one of them. In 1924, Canadian prospector and woodsman Albert Ostman went on a vacation near Toba Inlet in British Columbia. He'd heard stories of what locals called man-beasts in the area, but he dismissed it all as superstition. One night though, Ostman claimed he was abducted while in his sleeping bag by a large hairy creature who carried him across the wilderness for 3 hours before finally stopping at a plateau. And that's where Ostman encountered a family of 4 of these creatures, 2 adults and 2 children. Apparently that's where he was kept for 6 days. According to Ostman though, the creatures, they weren't aggressive, they were just keeping him there. He just watched as they went about their daily lives, also giving him what he described as sweet grass to eat. Ostman eventually escaped by feeding the large male some tobacco, making it groggy and then running off. He didn't come forward with his story until over 30 years later in 1957. He was scared everyone was going to think he was crazy.
Up first, the spark to the flame. Sightings have been reported for centuries, but this was the first one to be caught on film and started all the Bigfoot hype way back in 1967. Recorded by filmmakers Rogers Patterson and Gimlin, they had been riding their horses down a Californian trail in the Buff Creek area searching for Bigfoot after reports of recent sightings when they had to dismount to cross over a fallen log. It was lucky that they had, because just as they were crossing, the very creature they were after began to cross in the far clearing. They did manage to set up the camera in time, and though it is initially shaky, they do capture several critical clear seconds. The footage even has a fairly decent resolution of the creature's head and fur, which seems very intriguing and possibly believable. Since then, many have tried to smear and discredit Patterson and Gimlin, but they continue to attest to the truth of the sighting. Next is the swamp monster. Josh Highcliffe was a hunter with a chunk of property 9 miles west of Tunica. On this fateful morning, however, Josh decided that he would be hunting hogs, and so got out into the swamp early that morning. Well before sunrise, he settled in and waited for the pigs to arrive, but it was a few hours later when he heard a shuffling sound and began to prepare to take a pig home. Instead, he would see a massive Sasquatch focused on an old dead cypress tree in the swamp. Immediately, Josh started recording and captured some of the most chilling footage I've ever seen. We truly get to see and hear the incredible strength of this creature, as it appears to simply rip this tree trunk to shreds with its bare hands. Highcliffe ran the moment that he could and has allegedly not been back in the forest since. If it weren't for his posting on his own YouTube channel, which has no other videos, this footage likely would have never seen the light of day. Next is the Lettuce Lake legend. Matt initially thought this creature that he spotted while canoeing was a bear. However, after reviewing this footage with the park ranger, they determined that this couldn't be a bear. According to the park ranger, few bears, if any, ever went into the swamp. The creature was seen striding, swimming, and diving through the water, and did not seem to notice Matt at first. He has reason to believe that it also isn't a human, as what human would go diving in a fursuit in swamp water filled with 12-foot gators and water moccasins? Eventually, the creature does seem to notice Mark watching it and flees to deeper water before swimming away entirely. Could semi-aquatic swamp apes actually be real? No one expects to be watched by a Sasquatch while they work, but for this oil field worker, that's exactly what happened. He pulled up to a pipeline in the dead of winter to go through some simple diagnostic checks, and everything seems to be fine. He does his checks, gets back in his truck, and drives off. But that's when we see it. A massive 9-foot tall Sasquatch watching him from the trees. The creature has obviously been there for some time, as it's almost covered in fallen snow, and it's likely been keeping watch over a nearby family, protecting them from this oil worker. It's chilling to think that this worker could have been mere meters from a certain end, but thankfully he avoided a grisly fate. He has since apparently suffered harassment from an unknown figure who wants him to take down this footage. Next is the Night Walker. This footage came from western Montana, released by a family that lives in a home on the edge of the woods. On this night, the family heard horrific screeches and screams coming from the forest, along with loud thumps, bangs, and so the father grabs a camera and, perhaps unwisely thinking he's the main character, goes out into the trees. He finds a shattered tree that seems to have been smashed to pieces with a rock. While continuing to move deeper into the woods, he then comes across it. Suddenly, and without warning, a massive Sasquatch appears briefly and peers out of the forest at the camera. This is paralyzing footage and is deeply unsettling. It's clear, given the distances involved, that this Sasquatch could easily charge across this short clearing and tear this man limb from limb, and yet it doesn't. It simply stares, grunts, blinks, and then vanishes back into the woods just as quickly as it appeared.
Starting us off today, we have two campers, Jan and Larry, who claim to have been attacked by Bigfoot while out camping. Like James maybe one day. The pair had encountered another group of campers, some of which had claimed to have seen Bigfoot in the area on previous occasions, including the night before. Around midnight, all the campers went back to their respective tents. Jan and Larry had just zipped up their own tent when they began hearing footsteps coming from the bushes. Before Larry had the chance to check out where the noise was coming from, the sides of his tent began to shake. The Bigfoot was attacking them, aggressively clawing, scratching, pushing, and pulling at the tent. Eventually it moved on, but Jan and Larry will never forget that day. The pair claimed that there are 7 separate Bigfoots living in the area, and they've actually seen and heard the creature on separate occasions too. And they were able to capture photos of the Sasquatch's tracks. The name of the campsite was not disclosed, but the incident happened somewhere in Wisconsin, so do with that information what you will.
This next case comes out of Colorado. So back in 2015, a couple were driving on a desolate road late at night when they felt something bump into their car. They backed up a bit to see what they'd hit, praying that it wasn't a person, but they never expected to see what they saw. They spotted a dark shape on the road, looking like it could have been a bear. They pulled out a phone and started filming their rear view camera, and this is what they captured. Now, whatever this thing is, it's only on camera briefly, but pausing and taking a look at the thing fully upright, rushing towards the car, it looks pretty big. It's hard to get a sense of how big it is because it's pretty far away, but it looks to be taking up quite a big part of that one lane, and it looks fairly tall. What do you guys think though? Sasquatch, dude in a costume, a bear that's maybe learned to move like a human? Let us know down in the comments.
Next up, we have Teddy Roosevelt's retelling of a Bigfoot encounter as told to him by a German hunter named Baumann. The hunter Baumann, along with his friend, had gone out into the remote section of the Montana wilderness with one goal: to trap beavers. The men were likely the only hunters in the woods at the time because, as a general rule of thumb, hunters tended to avoid the area after a fellow trapper had been found mauled in the woods a few months prior. Baumann and his friends did not care. They set up camp and went out to lay their traps, but when they returned to their campsite, it was ransacked. Thinking the mess had been left by a bear, the two didn't really think much of it. Bowman began cooking dinner, and his partner left to investigate some tracks they'd seen. They were massive, and it was clear the creature had been walking on 2 legs. When the pair eventually settled into their tents for the night, they were weary, and rightfully so. They were awakened by an awful smell and the sound of branches breaking around their tent. The following day, the men decided to leave the area. Bowman went to gather the beaver traps while his partner packed up the camp. But when Bowman returned to the campsite, he was greeted by a horrific scene. His friend's body was laid out across the ground with a broken neck and bite marks all over. Bowman knew his friend was dead, and so he hightailed it out of there and lived to tell the tale.
Our next story comes to us from a deleted Reddit user who described their first-hand encounter with what they believe was a Sasquatch. The story goes as follows. So I was on this solo hike near a remote trail in the forest of Oregon. It was a beautiful day, sunny with a hint of a cool breeze, perfect for exploring nature. I've been on this trail before, but today something felt off from the get-go. About an hour into my hike, I started hearing these loud whooping sounds echoing through the trees. At first I brushed it off as some animal calls or maybe even other hikers goofing around, but the thing is, the sound was so intense, almost like they were coming from multiple directions at once. As I kept walking, the whoops turned into something more unsettling. They sounded closer, for one. Then I heard the snapping of branches coming from up the slope, like someone or something was trudging through the underbrush nearby. I stopped in my tracks, trying to listen more closely. That's when I saw rocks being hurled down from above. Luckily, I wasn't near or close enough for them to hit me. Now my fight or flight was kicking in. I couldn't see anything through the thick foliage, but whatever was making those noises was definitely close. My heart was pounding in my chest. I turned around and booked it. I didn't catch a glimpse of whatever was out there, but I can tell you it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had while hiking.
Next up, we have the Bigfoot attacks in the Valley of the Headless Man, which is actually in Canada. The attacks began in 1908. The bodies of two headless men appeared in the river of the valley. In 1945, another corpse was found, headless again, and years later a man was found in his sleeping bag, again with no head. While this might seem like the work of some senseless killer, it's important to note that natives in the area fled the land a few years prior to the first deaths, and other native tribes have actively avoided the lands for centuries. Perhaps they knew something those poor men who lost their heads didn't. Many people who have visited the area reported finding large bipedal animal tracks, hearing loud roars and breaking branches, and smelling sulfur and rotten fish, despite being quite far off from the riverbeds. All telltale signs that Bigfoot is near.
Portlock, Alaska. It used to be a busy little salmon cannery town on the southern coast, but by the 40s it was completely abandoned after a string of terrifying attacks. And I mean terrifying. This was not a bear or a wolf. It was something later dubbed the Portlock Sasquatch. The stories, they go back decades, as far back as 1905. Workers said something massive stalked their camps at night, leaving tracks and scaring people off. Every summer it seemed to come back, and hunters who wandered too far into the woods, sometimes they just never came back. In 1931, a woodchopper was found dead out in the forest. Witnesses said he'd been killed by a single blow. It was way too much force for any normal man to have pulled off. Over the next 10 years, there were multiple incidents. People claimed the thing was dragging villagers off into the trees, leaving mangled bodies behind. Nobody felt safe. Eventually, everyone packed up and left, turning Portlock into a ghost town almost overnight. But let's not move on from the Portlock Sasquatch just because, like I said, there were tons of incidents. Not long after that woodchopper was found dead in 1931, hunters heading out for moose noticed that a set of moose footprints had just stopped, and in its place were larger footprints, over 18 inches long. The whole area was torn up too. Tree branches were snapped, there was blood everywhere, but there was no sign of the moose. The only tracks leading away were those massive prints, vanishing once the ground turned rocky. Before long, more of these tracks started popping up around Portlock, and it wasn't just footprints. One local said he actually saw a giant hairy man tearing apart the fish wheels they used to process salmon. The man ran to grab his firearm, but when he came back, the creature was just standing there, staring at him. That creeps me out. Then it turned around and just walked off. After that, sightings became constant. These were folks who lived around bears, wolves, and mountain lions every day though. They knew the difference between normal predators and whatever this thing was. During a training exercise in the forests of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, his unit often spent weeks at a time in the wilderness. These were field operations, long stretches of patrolling and camping with only rifles loaded with blanks. According to him, strange things kept happening during those nights. The men sometimes spotted glowing eyes in the tree line, or they'd see vague figures through their night vision gear. They would hear knocks echoing from the woods or movement just beyond the perimeter, but nothing ever showed itself. One night though, around 3 a.m., two Marines were on watch while the rest of the unit slept. Both men saw shapes moving about in the darkness. Then small rocks started landing near them. Thinking it was a rival unit trying to ambush them, they quietly woke the others up and set up a defensive line. They opened fire with blanks, and that's when two massive, upright creatures stepped into view. One shoved over a tree and let out a deep growl that absolutely shook everyone there. When daylight came, they searched the area and found huge prints around the knocked over tree. King Tiger IV admitted he'd always been skeptical about Bigfoot, but after that made him a believer, and to this day he struggles to go into the woods. In 1978, the Caton family of Minerva, Ohio reported a terrifying encounter with this massive hairy creature near their home. They claimed it threw rocks at their house and left behind huge footprints in their yard. This was not a one-time event. Neighbors also reported seeing the same beast lurking in the area. The wave of sightings became known as the Minerva Monster case, and it drew heavy media coverage at the time. Former Stark County Sheriff Jim Shannon, who responded to one of the Catons' calls, later said they were terrified. "I will always believe them that they saw something, it's just what did they see?" In July of 1924, 5 prospectors, Fred Beck, Marion Smith, Roy Smith, Gabe Lefevre, and John Peterson, reported a terrifying encounter with what they referred to as, quote, mountain devils near Mount St. Helens, Washington. It became known as the Ape Canyon Attack. The men had been mining when they noticed unusual thumping sounds at night and massive 14-inch human-like footprints around their camp. One morning, Fred and Marion saw a 7-foot-tall hairy creature near a spring. They fired their rifles at it but missed, and the creature retreated back into the woods. That night, the men were supposedly attacked at their cabin by 3 large ape-like creatures. The beings threw rocks and pounded on the walls and roof, trying to break in. At one point, one of the creatures grabbed an axe through a gap, but the men managed to wrest it away. The attack lasted 5 hours until dawn, when the creatures finally retreated. As the men cautiously stepped outside, Fred spotted one creature on the canyon edge and fired at it, sending it tumbling into a gorge. The prospectors quickly left the area and reported the incident to a ranger, but the body of the creature was never found. The story spread nationwide though, and Ape Canyon became a famous Bigfoot site.
Number 10. How they live. In Washington state, a team of amateur Bigfoot researchers called the Olympic Project claimed to have discovered a collection of nests which belonged to Bigfoot. They had primatologists study them, with the conclusion being that they appear to have been created by a primate. There have been structures of broken and twisted foliage seemingly placed in specific areas, which have been attributed by some to Bigfoot behavior. In some reports, lodgepole pine and other small trees have been observed bent, uprooted, or stacked in patterns such as weaved and crisscrossed, leading to some to theorize that they are potential territorial markings. Some instances have included entire deer skeletons being suspended in high trees. Some Bigfoot researchers allege that Bigfoot throws rocks as territorial displays and for communication and audible blows struck against trees or wood knocking. Number 9. Where the species came from. Primatologist John R. Napier and anthropologist Gordon Strensenberg have suggested a species of Paranthropus as a possible candidate for the Bigfoot's identity, such as Paranthropus robutus with its gorilla-like crest skull and bipedal gait. Paranthropus is characterized by robust skulls with a prominent gorilla-like sagittal crest among the middle line, which suggests strong chewing muscles and broad herbivorous teeth used for grinding. Now, it's great that they believe this, but fossils of Paranthropus are found only in Africa, so it wouldn't really explain Bigfoot being in North America, but maybe it's something similar. Number 8. Research. Doing scientific research, Steve Moon, who has 3 MFAs and a master's in anthropology, has studied Bigfoot for the past 10 years, and he claims to have had at least 12 sightings. If you want credibility to build these theories, if you want to test, you want to actually discover things, then you've got to follow that method, he said. His ultimate goal is to prove Bigfoot's existence so the species may be appreciated and preserved. We all know that he exists, but now we need to find a way for science to accept the data, he said. While on a trail in the forest, Steve mimicked a Bigfoot's howl and he could hear a response. It was recorded and the recorder picked up a faint animal-like sound after his howl. Though it is almost inaudible, there is something there. Steve said, "I may have gotten a response. It's 2 seconds after my call ends. It's descending, followed by a percussive ascending note. If I were going to interpret this possible response, it sounds like a Sasquatch was offended by my call." Number 7. It's not just one species. Now, all around the world, people tell of mysterious beasts that are part human, part ape, typically large, hairy creatures that walk on 2 legs, but always seem to stay just out of sight. There isn't just a Bigfoot in North America, but there are other beasts as well. A yowie is found in Australia, particularly in the eastern part of the continent. continent. There have been over 3,000 distinct Yowie sightings that have been reported in the Blue Mountain area of west of Sydney. There's the Yeti, which is located in the Himalayas, which is also called the Abominable Snowman. The Orang Penyek is located in central Sumatra, Indonesia. Orang Penyek means a short person in Indonesian, which makes sense because it has a short stature and a human-like face. Local folklore says that these creatures walk with back-pointing feet to confuse anyone trying to track them. And finally, a chemosit is located in east central Kenyan forests. Some witnesses say that the chemosit looks like a hyena or bear and call it a Nandi bear after the Kenyan tribe that lives in its reported range. The Nandi people, however, consider the creature to be an enormous, ferocious primate that enjoys eating the brains of its victims. If there are so many creatures like this around the world, they have to exist then, right? Number 6. The theory. There have been many studies surrounding Bigfoot, and one study was conducted by John Napier and published in his book Bigfoot, the Yeti, and Sasquatch in Myth and Reality in 1973. John wrote that if a conclusion is to be reached based on scant extant hard evidence, science must declare Bigfoot does not exist. However, he found it difficult to entirely reject thousands of alleged tracks scattered over 125,000 square miles, or to dismiss all the many hundreds of eyewitnesses' accounts. John concluded, "I'm convinced that Sasquatch exists, but whether it is all it's cracked up to be is another matter altogether. There must be something in the Northwest America that needs explaining, and that something leaves man-like footprints."
Next on the list is the Portlock Bigfoot attacks. Portlock is an abandoned town in Alaska, and as for why it's abandoned, there are a few explanations, one of which has to do with reported attacks of giant hairy ape-like creatures. So in the 40s, the small community of Portlock, Alaska, had a string of unsettling incidents. Doll sheep hunters were disappearing, grisly discoveries of dismembered bodies were being found in the lagoon, and reports were coming in about encounters with an entity known locally as Nantinak, Bigfoot. There have been tales about Bigfoot, or Big Feet, as Hannah refers to them as, in Alaska for decades, and many still believe it's these creatures that caused the town to be abandoned. By 1949, the community of Portlock had dropped as residents left for neighboring villages. Residents have come out with tales of encountering enormous footprints, spotting a towering, hairy figure lurking in the woods, and discovering mutilated bodies of those who ventured into the wilderness.
Next up, we have an anonymous story that was shared with SasquatchChronicles.com by a UK woman who was visiting California on business when she stumbled upon something wild. Well, actually two something wilds, because believe it or not, while on a hike, the woman had walked right into the path of two massive Bigfoots. At first, she assumed that what she was looking at were some kind of mountain lions, but when the creature stood up on 2 feet, she realized that wasn't the case. These animals were easily over 7 feet tall. They were working together to collect seaweed. They were like eating the roots and then rubbing the seaweed on their fur. I don't know. They were by the waterway where the woman had been hiking. The woman pulled out her camera to snap a few photos, but before she could, the cover on her camera lens fell and it made its way down to where the animals had been. The larger of the two was furious. He began charging at the woman, and she thought for sure that these were her last moments, but the smaller of the two intervened. The two screeched at each other for a while, almost like they were speaking in some kind of gibberish language, before they retreated back to the woods. The woman somehow made her way quickly back to her car. She really can't remember the walk there. She was so dazed, but she feels lucky to be alive. However, she regrets not getting that photograph.
Next on the list, we have the Ape Canyon case. So this incident from 1924 is a tale from the Pacific Northwest of the United States that's become one of the most famous Sasquatch sightings in cryptozoology circles. According to the story, a group of miners claimed to have encountered a group of large, almost 7-foot tall, hairy, ape-like creatures in the vicinity of Mount St. Helens in Washington. The incident supposedly took place in Ape Canyon, which is what it's now called. A group of miners led by Fred Beck claimed to have been attacked by these mysterious creatures. Beck and his companions said that they had shot at the creatures in self-defense after being pelted with rocks, and later a bunch of these hairy creatures retaliated by attacking their cabin. The miners went outside the following day to find giant-sized footprints in the ground. Some believe the creatures described by Beck and his group were Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, or Big Feet, while others think it was all just a big, elaborate hoax.
What is the plural of Bigfoot, you guys? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we have the attack of the folk monster. That's not a swear word, that's the name of the monster. And don't come for me, but it's basically Arkansas's version of Bigfoot, or Arkansas, as James would say. The folk monster, also known as the Boggy Creek monster or the swamp stalker, is a massive bipedal ape-like creature with massive feet and a foul smell. Sound familiar? Exactly. In the spring of 1971, two young couples moved into the town of Folk, Arkansas, and rented a small house near a creek. It wasn't long before the couples noticed something wasn't right. They would often hear heavy footsteps coming from their front porch, and one night it seemed as though some kind of animal was attempting to gain access to their home. As the days went on, the pairs would often find massive three-toed footprints in the area around their house. And then one evening, they saw the creatures, massive, shaggy, smelly, standing tall on 2 feet. The creature again attempted to gain entry to the couple's homes, but one of the men fired at the creature, causing it to turn on the other man, who was badly injured and required medical attention after the ordeal. The police got involved, but were unable to locate the massive animal. And this event actually marks the only medically documented attack by a cryptid on a human in North America. So, it's legit, you guys.
Next we have more footage of a Bigfoot chasing a car, this time in Russia. Now I say Bigfoot, there's a very good chance it's just a dude in a costume or just some crazy person chasing the car, because it's that low quality of a video, like pretty much all Sasquatch videos are. So the footage was taken in 2016, and we see someone filming the side of a rural road with their phone camera. The people already sound frantic, like they've seen something before they started filming. Then you see this dark figure start ambling towards the car, and they drive off. But then they decide to stop the car and try to see if they can get a good shot of the creature again. Take a look.
Он бежит. Лёша, окно, закрыл!
Did you catch that? Here it is zoomed in and slowed down. So this footage comes from a man named Todd Standing. He's pretty well known in the Bigfoot enthusiast community. He's filmed a few pretty famous alleged pieces of Sasquatch footage, including this one here, which according to him was his first close-up sighting with one of the creatures. After the creature left, Todd and some of his crew apparently made their way up the cliff to try and determine how big this thing really was, and to them it looked like the thing may have been well over 8 feet tall. This footage was famous enough to show up on an episode of Finding Bigfoot, where they tried to recreate the footage by having one of the bigger guys on the team stand on the same ledge so they could try and get a sense of the creature's size in the video, and what they found was that the thing in the video was noticeably taller and bulkier. But ultimately, they couldn't definitively say whether Todd Standing's video was genuine or a hoax. This next video comes from Dee's Dark Adventures on YouTube. Seems she had a run-in with someone or something lurking in the trees while on a hike one night in Ohio. It starts when she sees a pair of eyes glaring at her from the shadows. She gets rightfully spooked and decides to make her way out of the forest, but whatever was watching her follows her. She makes it into a clearing and spots the thing again staring at her from the tree line. See how high up the eyes go when it stands up? At this point, she's in full panic mode and screams for whatever it is to just stop, but then it comes out from the trees and she can't tell if what she's looking at is a human or an animal of some kind. Creepy video. I like how she sounds genuinely terrified and panicked. And because it's Ohio, gotta wonder if that is the Ohio Grassman. Kind of their version of Bigfoot. Watch our Ohio videos to learn more about that. This is a really cool video. I mean, that thing looks terrifying. So this footage was taken on a stationary camera. I don't think anyone's standing there filming this. At least that's what we're led to believe here. I guess the idea is this was taken on a game camera or something, but clearly we see this big hairy man beast crouching in the bush. And when it stands up, it starts slamming logs and branches around. I don't know about you, but this is how I actually picture Bigfoot looking. It has this almost human face, but of course covered in this mane of unkempt fur. It's a creepy video, and we get a look at the thing for a good long time too. And not that it would be impossible for a regular person to lift a dead tree like that and slam it into the ground, but if this is a hoax, the person in the suit is pretty strong, so this is an impressive hoax, if it is one, I don't know. This footage was taken in southern Ontario, Canada by YouTuber Timber Giant Bigfoot. It's become a pretty well-known piece of video, sometimes referred to as the Big Red footage. This guy had his camera on the creature for a good stretch of time. This isn't just some blurry figure walking through the woods from like a mile away. Now, whatever the thing is, it looks big and hairy. Also doesn't really appear to be a bear. There really only are black bears in this part of the country, and this thing does not look like a black bear. Anyway, he has a bit of a hard time keeping his camera on the thing because he's zooming in from a fair distance. I wouldn't want to get too close either. He films for a good few minutes before the big creature gets up and walks off. What you're looking at here is footage taken by cryptozoologist Paul Freeman. Paul Freeman is still regarded as one of the most important investigators in the Bigfoot community. This video was captured in the Blue Mountains of Northeast Oregon in 1994, and it's often referred to as one of the best pieces of Sasquatch video evidence. Aside from this video, Paul Freeman was also well known for his plaster casts he made out of supposed Bigfoot tracks. The casts were studied quite a bit because they showed dermal ridges, and anthropologists like Jeff Meldrum of Idaho State University considered the casts highly credible pieces of possible evidence and put a lot of time and effort into studying them. As for this video, is it genuine, a hoax? It could go either way, but I like that we get a pretty good look at the creature here, enough to see a bit of a face rather than just a dark blur somewhere off in the distance.
Number 5. Bigfoot likes children. This user tells a story of seeing Bigfoot as a child. They said, "I've had 2 separate sightings here in central Alabama, once when I was about 5 and another when I was 19. The first one, I was at my Nana's house playing outside in a treehouse my dad and Pa built for me, and I looked off into the woods and saw a large light brown bipedal creature standing there watching me. So I ran inside to get my Nana, and when we came back out to the treehouse, it was gone. The second time, me and my wife were coming back from a buddy's house real late at night, and I saw something large cross on 2 legs in front of a yellow road sign up ahead. These signs were about 10 feet tall, and this thing covered the whole sign when I walked in front of it." Now, many people believe that Bigfoot likes children. While many don't think they actually eat children, they think they might try to kidnap them to keep as pets, as they like to watch kids for the same reason people like to watch kittens or puppies playing, and there's a similar urge to take one home with them. Number 4. Falling Bigfoot. Bigfoot has been reportedly spotted in Colorado more than 100 times in recent years, including one notable daylight spotting that occurred in Summit County, Colorado. In the summer of 2019, a daytime hiker was taking a break near an old log cabin in the area of Mayflower Gulch near Frisco when he spotted something strange at about 11,000 feet of elevation. He reported seeing a large bipedal creature attempting and failing to climb a 20-foot high snow wall. After the failed attempt at scaling the barrier, the creature moved on and out of sight. The hiker was joined by 2 others, and they searched the area. During this search, the group was able to locate prints in the snow, including large handprints and footprints. That being said, they were unable to again locate the actual creature. The report prompted Bigfoot Field Research Organization investigator Scott Miles to further look into the report. Scott decided to meet up with the witness at the site of the spotting. At the scene, the witness was able to recount the sighting in a manner consistent with the initial report, pointing out exact landmarks involved in his story. After deeper analysis of the witness's account, Scott said, "I believe that the witness saw exactly what he reported and was witness to a Sasquatch, probably a young individual that accidentally or naively got caught in a compromising situation in the daytime in a fairly high traffic area." Number 3. In the swamp. In 2015, 2 men canoeing in Tampa, Florida swamp were expecting to see an alligator when they heard rustling on the bank. They soon realized that the creature they were watching was no alligator. One of the men said, "Initially, it was exciting. It was like, oh, is that a bear? That's pretty cool. But when we moved closer, it started to look less and less like a bear. In that moment, I was looking at it and getting a little bit freaked out, especially once it started really moving. You could tell that he was slapping the water, and it looked like maybe he was grabbing something. At the time, I was thinking, holy what the hell is this? By the time it walked off, my buddy was just like, let's go now. The friend moved one of the canoe paddles, making a noise, which seemed to catch the attention of the hairy individual in the swamp. I don't know if it was a coincidence that it started moving because of the noise, but it seemed to know that we were there. He said his friend was so shaken by the experience that he won't talk about it. Number 2. his face. This user describes what they saw when they came face to face with Bigfoot. They saw the beast in early spring 1994 or 95 in Salt Fork State Park in Ohio, Hazac's Cave. I hope I said that right. He said, "The one I saw had black sclera, the white part of her eyes, and cheek pads like a male orangutan. It was not a man in a suit. It threw rocks at me as I hiked a path towards a small waterfall, and I was a little confused but oblivious. The last rock was bigger and hit me in the calf and hurt. I spun around quickly towards the direction it came from, yelling, 'That really hurt,' thinking it was somebody messing with me, and saw a head from the eyes looking up over a fallen tree or ridge maybe 15 feet away. It looked like an orangutan wearing a ghillie suit. I looked in the eyes for maybe 5 seconds trying to comprehend what I was looking at. Golden brown eyes with black sclera and cheek pads like a male orangutan. It didn't look malicious really, had more of an okay, you got the point look. It casually turned its eyes away and ducked back behind the tree or ridge. Then I realized what I saw and got back to my car. All I could think was that, because of his cheek pads, he was the dominant male of the troop. They must have been at the water source that I was hiking towards, and he was keeping me from getting closer. I was maybe 3/4 of the way there, but the smaller rock started at about the halfway point and got gradually bigger until I caught on. I told my brother and best friend, and they didn't believe me, so I dropped or suppressed it for 20 years. I didn't think of it again until I saw a Bigfoot toy and thought they got the face wrong. And coming in at number 1 is the traffic cam sighting. A Washington Department of Transportation traffic camera near Sherman Pass captured Bigfoot standing in the snow in January 2020. At least one person at the Washington State Department of Transportation seems to think they saw Bigfoot after tweeting out some puzzling images captured by one of the department's webcams. "Sasquatch spotted," the Department East Twitter account tweeted, along with 3 circled and zoomed in photos. "I'm not superstitious, just a little stitious." The employee points out that there appears to be something in the bottom left part of the frame. It looks like a person-shaped figure silhouetted against an evergreen tree. "Might be Sasquatch, we will leave that up to you," the tweet said. The tweet also says that the photos were captured on State Road 20 Sherman Pass, a route that winds its way through the forested Cascade Mountains in the northeastern part of the state. The spot is about 70 kilometers south of the Canada-US border in Grand Forks, BC. Honestly, I think it could be Bigfoot. It looks convincing. Number 10. Strange sounds. A Bigfoot sighting became a federal investigation when a man fired his weapon inside a national park in Kentucky. Brad Ginn told news outlets he and his girlfriend were camping nearby and were awakened at about 1 a.m. by a man with his son. "We got out of the tent and saw a man who told us their campsite had been destroyed by someone or something. The man, who was with his young son, showed them his weapon on his hip and told him the area was popular for Bigfoot sightings. The couple climbed back into their tent as the man walked away to investigate with his son in tow. We heard them coming back about 10 minutes later. We heard them yelling, 'I see it,' Brad said. We saw a flash from his weapon, and he shot maybe 20 yards from the side of our tent into the pitch black darkness. After this, Brad and his girlfriend decided to leave and report the incident, which was the smart thing to do. A park spokeswoman, Molly Schwarr, said there was an investigation and that the park was safe to visit. The statement did not confirm a Bigfoot sighting, but Molly said that no threat remains in the park. Federal regulations prohibit the discharge of a firearm in the national park, and park officials know the identity of the person who allegedly fired the weapon, but no charges had been filed. Number 9. Thrown logs. In 2015, a pair of Bigfoot hunters were hot on the trail of a Bigfoot outside Houston, Texas. While following the beast, they realized the creature was unhappy with their presence. As they began their overnight hunt, the lead investigator realized that something was throwing full-sized logs at them from the tree line. That's according to Wes Germer, host of the Sasquatch Chronicle podcast, whose team ventured into the East Texas piney woods. In the early night, the noise came. We heard this thing crash through the bush, and then we heard this thing start crashing, just crash, 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 and you can hear it walking, and you can hear it breaking branches as it's going. Then the giant bolted off and plowed fiercely through the dense brush with astonishing speed. This thing moved so fast, it probably covered 150 yards like nothing. As we neared the spot where we heard the beast lurch, lurking, a noise grew and I knew what it was. It was a log coming, and it was a big log and you could hear it being thrown. And I ducked down because I thought for sure it was going to hit us, but it hit the tree right in front of us and I just couldn't believe what was happening. Wes says it was a warning and that it wasn't the only time Sasquatch has thrown logs at unwelcomed intruders. Number 8. New footprint. In March 2022 in Big Sur, California, a hiker spotted a very large footprint. They took a picture of it next to their own foot for perspective and shared it on Reddit's Bigfoot page, where commenters discussed if they felt the print belonged to a Sasquatch or if it was nothing. And there were plenty of believers. One person wrote, "This is the first imprint I have seen that isn't clearly a bear. Good find." While another stated, "I wish the print was more fresh, but it really does look more like a Bigfoot track," and a third chimed in, "What a solid print." Someone else added, "Definitely Sasquatch. The upper foot impressions is relative to the lower width and diameter of depth. I'd reach out to the local Bresto Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization in your area ASAP." Now it honestly does look huge, and to me, you can even see the toe prints. Seems pretty convincing to me. Number 7. Bigfoot eats hogs. East Texas is the home to many reported sightings of Bigfoot, including one particular encounter from a hunter in Panola County. The witness claims that while he was hog hunting, he watched a Sasquatch leap out of the woods and grabbed one of the hogs. The report states that the Bigfoot began making loud whooping noises, which were met with more howls from somewhere off in the distance. Before walking back into the woods, the creature stared directly at the hunter and growled. Seemed like the hunter got a little too close to Bigfoot territory. Now those whooping sounds would definitely creep me out, especially if there were more coming from the forest. Ugh. Number 6. Face to face. One of the 3 Midland County Bigfoot encounters documented details of a witness discovering an ape-like creature on the first day of hunting season in 1997. The witness claims to have seen the legendary creature on November 15th, 1997 while driving in a wooded area near Coleman on Coleman Road, about 6 miles north of M20. They said, "I was driving north around 6:45 and saw a creature coming out of the ditch." The report describes the creature as having a flat, ape-like face and hair on its arms and head. The witness claims to have come within 10 feet of the creature when it looked at the witness. As the witness got closer to the beast, it made eye contact with him before disappearing into the trees, and that is terrifying. Number 5. Recently spotted in Pennsylvania. The Bigfoot Field Organization, aka BFRO, has their own website filled with hundreds of stories of people spotting Bigfoot. On the website, a story was posted by a user saying, "On October 5th, 2022, while my boyfriend and I were biking on the ghost town trails near Emmitsburg, Pennsylvania, we saw a Bigfoot coming about 150 yards in front of us. He was walking along the trail towards us. We couldn't see his face, but when he saw us, he turned around quickly and walked into the woods. As we went by, we looked into the woods and didn't see anything. It was really shocking as there were no sounds or smells. As he was walking, you could see how big his stride was and there was a huge space between his legs. We thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime thing and thought it was so cool. Yes, Bigfoot does exist." And just in case you think the BFRO just took a submitted report, the site reported that it did a follow-up and spoke with the witnesses. It even names them on the site and they found their testimony to be credible. The investigator who put it all together, Matthew Moneymaker, who was mentioned in part 1 of the series. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, check them out. Number 4. 3 photos of Bigfoot. A keen hunter once claimed to encounter Bigfoot and unveiled shocking photo proof to the world after setting up cameras outside his house. Craig Salk really loved hunting with his wife, and to increase the odds of their hunting success, Craig set up a number of trail cameras on his land. In 2012, one of his cameras snapped a mysterious figure that didn't appear to be animal or human. Luckily, Craig was a big fan of the show Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet, and he knew exactly what he had to do. He reached out to the TV channel and showed the producers the image captured on his cameras. Animal Planet was massively impressed by the fact that Craig had managed to get 3 snaps of the mysterious creature and filmed an episode with him. After the episode aired, Craig was suddenly a star and he was flooded with phone calls and visits from Americans who wanted to share their own bizarre paranormal experiences. Craig and his wife soon opened their land to the world to let anyone come out and examine the spot where Bigfoot was seen, take a look at the pictures, and judge for themselves. Number 3. First sighting ever. David Thompson was a surveyor and trader who worked for the Hudson's Bay Company and the Northwest Company. He was considered one of North America's great pathfinders and surveyors as he traveled through Western North America between 1785 and 1812. Once he saw Bigfoot and wrote in his journal of his finding while in Alberta, Canada. He wrote, January 7th, 1811. Continuing on our journey in the afternoon, we came on the track of a large animal. The snow about 6 inches deep on the ice. I measured it, 4 large toes, each 4 inches in length, to each a short claw. The ball of the foot sunk 3 inches lower than the toes. The hinder part of the foot didn't mark well, the length 14 inches by 8 inches in breadth, walking from north to south, and having passed about 6 hours. As the snow was about 6 inches in depth, the track was well defined, and we could see it for a full 100 yards from us. This animal was proceeding north to south. We did not attempt to follow it, we had no time for it, and the hunters, eager as they are to follow and shoot every animal, made no attempt to follow this beast, for what could the balls of our fowling guns do against such an animal? Number 2. The Battle of Ape Canyon. The most successful launching pad for the public's obsession with Bigfoot is a battle that supposedly took place in a narrow gorge on the east flank of Mount St. Helens. The gorge is now called Ape Canyon. That's where, in the summer of 1924, a group of gold prospectors stumbled out of the woods shaking and glassy-eyed to tell of a 7-foot-tall ape-like animals attacking them with boulders. Fred Beck and 4 others described coming upon gorilla men near where they had built a small cabin. They saw 4 of the giant animals moving through the forest with erect, human-like strides. They were covered with long black hair, their ears were about 4 inches long and stuck straight up. They had 4 toes, short and stubby. The witnesses estimated each animal weighed around 400 pounds. Taken aback at the sight of the huge beasts, Fred fired his rifle at one of the creatures and struck 3 times, resulting in the wounded animal toppling off a cliff. This would be a mistake though, as that night the men were awakened when huge stones began hitting against their cabin. Then they heard and felt giant bodies slamming against the walls and door. The 8 men were seeking revenge and eventually tore a hole in the roof, allowing them to target Fred. Many of the rocks fell through the hole in the roof, and 2 of the rocks struck Fred, one of them rendering him unconscious for nearly 2 hours. Then, when the sun began to come up, the animals broke off their attack and slipped away. The men then poked their heads out the door, and when they decided the coast was clear, they ran out of the woods. And coming in at number 1, Bigfoot kidnapping. In 1924, Albert Ostman, a lumberjack and woodsman, went on vacation in the woods. Albert had heard stories about the man-beast who supposedly roamed these woods but refused to believe them. Then everything changed. One night when he was asleep, a Sasquatch picked him up and carried him off while he was in his sleeping bag. He was carried in a sleeping bag across the country for 3 hours by the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch then dropped Albert down on a plateau, and standing around him was a family of 4 of the creatures, 2 adults and 2 children. Albert claims he was kept captive by them for 6 days. One of the Bigfoots was reported as being 8 feet tall. Now, Albert had a gun, but he decided not to use it as they had done him no harm. He stayed with the Bigfoot family, stating he ate sweet-tasting grass that they gave him, and the female Sasquatch washed and stacked leaves. He escaped by making the large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him some snuff. Albert did not tell his story for more than 24 years after it happened, in fear of being thought of as crazy. But as more Sasquatch stories appeared in the press, Albert decided to tell his story.